Just give it another 30 seconds or so, just to allow everybody to join. Excellent. I think we'll get started. Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today on this construction line webinar on social value. We have launched a social value goal within the system. I'll get to that in a second. So obviously that's the kind of main point of why we're having this session. But we also think it's quite important to really help the community understand the value of that social value and what this scheme will actually bring to helping your businesses going forwards. We're very lucky in that we have guests from the top two largest construction firms in the UK, Balfour Beatty and Kia. Both have been and are pivotal in driving the importance of social value within the construction industry, both from an organisational perspective and I know also as individuals themselves. So with us today, we have first of all, we have Joe Potts from Kia. Joe is the group lead for sustainable procurement and compliance at Kia. In addition to spending over 4 years working with the group procurement team at Kia, Joe has worked across a number of industries, including waste, global logistics, and Formula One. So Joe, thank you very much for joining us today. Aaron Reid is the Associate Director for Sustainability and Sustainable Procurement, and he's the lead on Balfour Beatty's UK Sustainable Procurement Strategy. It's award-winning supply diversity programme and was responsible for developing Balfour Beatty's £1 billion spending commitment to SMEs. He's held a senior EDR roles across a number of companies, including London Development Agency and with Advantage West Midlands, where he worked with blue chip organisations to help them adopt good EDR practice. So Aaron, thank you very much for joining us as well today. I'm going to keep my talking to a minimum. Aaron and Joe are absolutely the experts on this, on why social value is important, and also leading on to why the social value goal that we've introduced into the system is equally important. As we go through this, if you have any questions, there's a Q&A button. Please feel free to fire the questions in. We've already had one already, which I'll quickly deal with. When can we retrieve the recording? So there'll be an email sent after the session where you'll get a link to be able to watch the recording of the webinar as well. But any more questions beyond that, please feel free to jump in, and Aaron, Joe, and myself will look to pick them up as we go along. So. Obviously, within the discussion with Aaron and Joe, we're going to talk about the importance of social value and what it actually means. I'm going to go into more detail later on about how this social value goal within the system has kind of developed. But ultimately, last year, we did the migration from the old construction line platform onto the new construction line platform, and we started to have a lot of engagement with buyer side firms, especially, who were starting to ask us around, do you have this data, do you capture this data? And it became clear that there was becoming quite a shift in social value. Now, social value has always been around for quite some time, but it's certainly since PPN 0620, we've certainly seen a big shift in the industry of people eager to be able to understand the supply chain better, largely because of the big lever that's kind of been introduced from a public sector perspective, that a minimum of 10% weighting must be applied when assessing the selection process from a public sector perspective, where those contracts are for central government organisations, and that came in from the beginning of this year. With that in mind, we set about introducing a new social value question set now. I'll go through it in more detail, but this isn't something that we have in isolation come up with, because we were getting so much interest from so many of our buyer members to the platform. We set up a working group of which there are 17 organisations, public and private sector. Kia, Balfour Beatty both instrumental in really helping to drive that forward. Now, the social value goal is now configured and is live within the system. For the majority of you that are on this webinar today, those of you who signed up today, I think in the next 12 hours, we'll get the goal assigned to you, and it's already there for you to go and complete and get verified and get the certificate. Now, it's really important that we just to really emphasize a couple of points in relation to the social value goal. Firstly, there is no cost to anybody to be able to complete this goal. So we've implemented this into the system. We're not charging anybody for it to be on the membership or to verify their data or anything like that. This is, something that we feel quite strongly that there's a big benefit to our members, buyer and supplier in doing this. The third aspect of this is that the social value goal doesn't impact the verification status of any of your other goals on the platform. So if you're a gold member, for example, and you're verified to gold, just because you haven't completed the social value goal, it isn't going to downgrade your gold status. So the two things work completely independent of each other. We're very excited about this, and hopefully this will come through in the discussion that we're going to have with Joe and Aaron. But we really think that this social value goal is firstly going to help suppliers who actually already have quite a good story in that area, given the platform on which to shout about, what a great job they're doing, help everybody else to kind of understand what good looks like, where they should be driving forwards. Ultimately, it should help them foster better relationships with many of their upstream customers, like Balfour Beatty and Kia, give another data point between the organisations to have good dialogue on. I mean, ultimately, this is about helping you to retain revenue, helping you to grow and win more revenue. From a buyer side, obviously, we're now going to be able to give you social value data that you might use in the selection process, allow you to monitor your supply chain, monitor specific projects, and obviously then use that data to maybe surface up upstream as part of your bids and tenders that hopefully help you win more business. So, in theory, there should be a reciprocal benefit for everybody of suppliers getting involved and engaging with this social value goal. So I'm going to get onto the Q&A, bring the stars into this. Obviously, we've got a set of questions, but we've decided that we're going to break the key rule of television, and which says that you should never do live TV with animals, children, and technology you've never used before. Now we've decided we're going to start trying to introduce some polls into this. So as we go through, we're going to ask you to provide your feedback on a couple of polls, and we're going to use that data in the discussion with Joe and Aaron to really bring this to life. So with a deep inhale of breath, off we go. Let's see if the technology gods are going to be kind to us today. So the first question is, do you feel you fully understand what social value means and how it relates to the way your organisation procures or sells services now and in the future? So if you could so hopefully people are answering that. The technology gods are not being nice to me. Billy, I can't see the results.
It's looking pretty close. So yes, 44%, and we have no at 56%.
Okay, cool. That's pretty interesting. So I guess coming to, both of you really, but I'll start with Joe. From your perspective, what is, and from Keir's perspective, social value, and what does your organisation really focus on when thinking about a social value? Because it's obviously, you know, we've got a large percentage of the industry that's actually saying, you know, we actually don't have a really good understanding of what it means.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the introduction there, Rob. For us, it's very much around tackling inequality, giving individuals and communities the tools and opportunities to create brighter futures. For us, a lot of our stuff is project-based, so it's about having a positive impact at the point where we're on a project and leaving a positive legacy. For us, a couple of the key things that we're really focusing on at the moment are around diversity and inclusion. And there's kind of two parts to that. So firstly, from a supply chain perspective, so breaking down barriers for the likes of SMEs, social enterprises and things like that, so they find it easier to enter our sector. And that really helps on the diversity front. And then also from a people perspective, so our industry is facing a shortage of skilled people, especially as time goes by, and that's going to get worse. So it's looking at how we can develop people as well. So we're doing a lot of work to address that skills gap with ex-offenders, ex-forces, ex-carers, people who are facing long-term employment and apprenticeships and things like that. So that's very much what that's about. But I think as tier one contractors as well, and I don't want to put words in Aaron's mouth, but hopefully he feels the same about this. We have a responsibility to help support our supply chain and to upskill and to provide them with the knowledge, skills, the tools that they need to deliver for what our clients are asking for.
Aaron, has Joe put words into your mouth?
No, not at all. To be honest, as you were speaking, I'm not sure I could put it any better. I also can't guarantee, you mentioned about children, animal and technology, and I've got my dog scratching at the door, and so I can't guarantee we're not going to have an animal intervention, surely. But yeah, I mean, from our perspective, social value, you know, it's the same. It's about how we deliver that additional value through our operations that supports the long-term well-being of communities and individuals, typically measured in things like the economic, environmental and social factors. Our big focus, very much as Joe said, clearly a big focus around the employment and spend and community engagement activities. And I think regardless of kind of the size of an organisation, most organisations employ people, most of them spend money, and most of them have got an opportunity to engage with those communities around them, hopefully in a positive way. And as Joe quite rightly points out, you know, we've got a real, if there wasn't a business imperative before for being more diverse and inclusive, then there certainly is now, with the skills shortage that we're experiencing. It's long talked about, but actually now we all seem to be feeling it. And so there's something around that D&I piece for me, which is, you know, if we addressed the underrepresentation of ethnic minorities and of women in our sector, then arguably there wouldn't be a skill shortage. And so real opportunity for us all to go at that there. But for us, it's about how our supply chain can demonstrate a track record and also make a commitment to delivering on some of these agendas, and particularly those that Joe's outlined. But especially, as I say, we've all got an opportunity to have a positive impact through the employment choices that we make and also through our spend decisions.
So this is obviously, as you kind of alluded to there, it's become a lot more important. It's going to become a lot more important because of other dynamics, but actually even before COVID, before, you know, the impacts of Brexit have really taken the toll. We're already seeing quite a big uptick in the interest from, as an organisation, we were seeing quite a big uptick. So I guess, you know, obviously, Aaron, you've been working in this area for a long time. What's been the, you know, I guess the long-term history, more recent history that's kind of really brought this forward, that suddenly makes it an imperative for almost every organisation to really start thinking about?
I think we've all, most of us have kind of been doing social value for a long time. We might have called it something else, CSR, we might have called it community engagement, but we've all been doing variations on the theme. I think Social Value Acts that came out in 2012 kind of helped to focus minds around the types of activity that we do, and certainly over the last couple of years we've seen social value flow down from our customers in a way that we haven't seen before. We're seeing anywhere between 10 and 30% of total bid marks now being given over to social value and sustainability, and where all other things are equal, we win or lose work on way less than 10 and 30%. And so it's absolutely becoming if not then certainly a key differentiator, because, you know, where all other things are equal and there's an expectation that you can deliver on your core service. You know, obviously, you know, you're an infrastructure company, you're a construction company, you can build things, but actually what's that additional value that you can bring to me? And I think with PPNO 620, it's now giving it that real kind of laser focus, and it's absolutely clear. You know, something like 80% of our customers are based in the public sector, and something like 80% or the majority of what we do is delivered by our supply chain. And so as we get that requirement flowing down from the majority of our customers, it's not us for the most part that's going to deliver that. It's going to be our supply chain. And so that PPNO 620 has been a game changer, I think. And there's no rolling back of this is not a fad, it's not a trend, it's not going away. This is just absolutely needs to become, you know, a core competency of us and our supply chain, something we have to do and measure and demonstrate.
And do you think the new public procurement paper regulations that are due to come out, because obviously there's a green paper at the end of last year, social value was quite prominent in there, you know, very prominent in there. Do you think that's going to look to further reinforce that push down, as you say, from public sector through the economy, essentially?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, there's always an intention, you know, whenever we get into any sort of economic difficulty, government always reaches for infrastructure spend. You know, here's what we'll do, we'll, you know, spend more money on infrastructure. And so there's always this implicit expectation that by spending money on construction and infrastructure, it will go on to have a positive economic and social impact. And so for me, all of this is just a tightening up and of that intention to hopefully lead to more deliberate outcomes. So yeah, absolutely, you'll see a further tightening up of this as we go forward.
Excellent. So I think that's a nice segue into our second poll question. So specifically for those people who procure, are you already incorporating social value in your subcontractor or supplier selection process? Billy will have to jump in and tell me the scores on the doors.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just going to wait for them to answer the questions. Looking like another close one.
Okay.
So at the moment, there's around 58% that's no and 42% that's yes.
Okay. That's I actually expected it to be more the other way around, which was pretty interesting. So I guess, Joe, question for you: we kind of touched on it already. Is Kia really seeing the importance of social value increasing in relation to winning public contracts, and are you already seeing evidence of that coming through from, you know, the tender and bidding work that you as an organisation are having to do to win?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from a central government perspective, there's the mandatory 10% minimum weighting, and as Aaron sort of mentioned earlier, we're seeing that up to sort of 30% on some tenders. But then across that public sector as well, a lot of people are seeing that as really good practice and have adopted the same. So we're seeing that through more and more public sector contracts now. I think a good point to make here as well is on the social value initiatives, they should enhance wellbeing and increase life chances, and therefore ease the strain on public bodies. So people like the health and education parts of government. So it all feeds into each other. And this agenda is very much, it's moved away from being a box ticking exercise. We're no longer looking at easy wins. This is very much around collaboration and innovation to really understand the maximum positive impact and best value for money. And I think people generally recognise that ultimately it's morally and ethically the right thing to be doing.
Yeah, okay. Anything to add, Aaron?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think we're in a space at the moment where it's all about outcomes. It's absolutely not about ticking the boxes. It's about kind of demonstrating and delivering those outcomes. So yeah, absolutely. And from a public procurement perspective, as I said before, most of what we do is delivered by our supply chain, and on some of our contracts we've got commitments to deliver 20, 30, 40 up to 60% additional social value, and there's no possible way that we can deliver that by ourselves. And so we do need, and I think that was very much the start of conversations that we had with you guys, we need the ability to be able to determine which of our supply chain partners are best able to support us to deliver on those commitments in a real way that's actually going to have a positive impact in terms of outcomes. So our ability to choose the right supply chain partners is absolutely key in our ability to deliver social value. We cannot do it by ourselves.
And obviously we've talked a lot about how this is coming down from the public sector to private sector. You've said that it's clearly going to be flowing down, but is it also passing over into the private sector as well? Those private sector organisations that are looking to procure, are they also putting obligations on firms like yourselves around social value? Is it still just the ultimately being pushed down from a public sector organisations?
I think some are, some aren't, but it's certainly in a less prescribed way than we're seeing from the public sector. But typically there'll be some kind of beholdens one way or another to the public purse, even with a lot of private customers, and so it is finding its way in there, but typically in a less prescribed way. I don't know if Joe has a different experience.
No, exactly the same.
And how far down do you think this is actually going to push down? I mean, are we, you guys know how many N tiers you can end up having in your supply chain. Is this you only want or need visibility of your first layer down, or is it actually is this going to end up in a situation where whatever many tiers it is down to the final flow of cash? Are you as organisations going to need to have visibility down to that? Is that what the public sector is actually expecting of you?
Do you want me to take that one? I think for us, it's very much going down into the supply chain. There's a huge piece around the supply chain transparency, and that is digging below tier one and looking at what everybody's doing. And really, that's the only way we're going to add value. It's all very well, Kia and Balfour Beatty doing things. It's very well looking at our tier one contractors, but we've got to flow that all the way through the supply chain to actually make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Ultimately, if you're a subcontractor or a supplier who's part of our supply chain, who is employing people or spending money that derived from certainly our public sector customers, then increasingly there's going to be an obligation on you to kind of provide some evidence of where you spend that money, what positive good it had, and who was employed and how are they employed in the delivery of those public sector contracts. If you take HS2, for example, huge public interest in that project, and we all want to make sure that it delivers for the public purse, that we get the biggest economic impact that we can out of that project. And that means that suppliers are increasingly going to have to employ local people. It means that by employing rehabilitating offenders or the long-term unemployed, that's where you get your bang for the buck, because we move people. It's this inclusive growth piece. We move people out from being economically inactive or into a position where they're economically active. If you take the example of rehabilitating offenders, for example, if you remove them, the highest probability of offenders not reoffending is if you put them into employment. What that does is obviously reduce the costs associated with the criminal justice system. It means that people are no longer more likely to be receiving benefit. It means they're paying taxes. It means that they're shopping. And so there's this, and spending in the local economy that way, or shopping more. And so, there's a much better return for the public purse when you start to make those sorts of decisions. And it feels like a small thing, but it's a very significant thing when multiplied and magnified down through the supply chains of organisations like Kier and Balfour Beatty. Yeah. So everybody's got a part to play.
There's been a couple of questions that have come up about, I guess, some of the acronyms and some of the that we've used throughout. So we'll just have a quick run through those, I think, just to make sure we bring everybody up to the right level. So first one is PPN 0620. So Aaron, I don't know if you want to pick that one up. What is it? And there's also a question about what exactly do you mean by the 10% weighting? How does that actually transfer into reality?
So I always get this wrong, but the public procurement notification. I'm pretty sure the N doesn't stand for notification, but it's
not notice. But
yes, there you go.
Close enough.
I know I get it. I like the first hurdle. So essentially it was procurement guidance issued to central government procurement that requires them to carry, amongst other things, to carry this minimum 10% weighting for social value, and there's a methodology for how they should do that. And so the 10% is in the kind of a balanced scorecard way. They'll give so much to cost, so much to quality, so much to whatever else it might be, but of that, a minimum of 10% is now necessarily needs to be for social value, where it hadn't been before. Some of them may have done it, but there was no compulsion for them to do so, whereas there is now.
Cool. We've got a couple of questions. So what's the difference between CSR and ESG and D&I?
I'll give that to Jo.
Thank you very much. I think to a large extent that they are all interlinked, and it's just about the language that's sort of changed in the landscape as we've gone along. So CSR was probably the older name for what is now social sustainability, and then diversity and inclusion is very much a huge part of the social sustainability agenda. So I think it's just tying the social sustainability with the environmental sustainability agendas, and then having that commercial lens that's kind of applied across both of them. Aaron, I don't know if you've got anything you want to add on to that.
No, absolutely. ESG, very much kind of a corporate governance kind of approach in terms of environmental, social, and so that sort of lens. CSR, as Jo said, kind of old money for talking about social value. The key thing for me about social value, and I think as Jo said, it isn't just the social stuff, it's also the environmental stuff. It's got very bad PR. It's quite misleading to talk about social value because people instantly jump to all of the community stuff, and actually those environmental factors that have a play on the well-being of communities and individuals is a very significant part of this as well.
Excellent. So we've actually got a lot of questions that have come in that nicely line us up for the next session, or the next questions are all about why they should do it, what good looks like, who's going to pay for social value, etc. So we'll jump nicely onto the next poll question. So is your organisation already taking steps to demonstrate the social value it can offer?
Okay, someone has been launched now. Okay, there seems to be quite an obvious answer to this one. Yes. So 70% yes, and we've got 30% no.
That's excellent. That's very, very good. Once again, I was expecting it to be a little bit more in the other direction. So that's really positive. So I guess, Jo, so where firms are looking to start are at the beginning of their social value journey. What pointers would you give to them on how to proceed, how to really start moving along in the right direction?
I think the first thing to do is to look at what you already do. I would be surprised if every organisation represented in this room today, virtual room today, doesn't already do something that generates social value, whether that's employing local people, making use of apprenticeships, volunteering, fundraising for good causes and charities, training and developing their staff, and even sponsoring a local sports team. So these are all examples of adding social benefit to local communities. So have a look at what you're already doing. record it, measure it, set a target if you want to improve on that as well. As soon as you've got that documented, that's evidence that we can then use with our clients to show them what not just Kia are doing or what Balfour Beatty are doing, but what we're doing within our supply chains as well. Also, look at your policies and procedures. Are they reflective of where you are and where you want to be going? Think about things, for example, modern slavery. We've got a legal compliance. You know, if you've got turnover of more than 36 million, you must have modern slavery statement published on your website. Consider whether a topic as big as modern slavery should only apply to those companies over 36 million, or whether perhaps you might want to set your own statement up yourselves. So it's things like that, and showing that intent to get started on that journey. And I think also there's so many resources out there that can support you on this as well. The Supply Chain Sustainability School, very prevalent within our sector. Kia and Balfour Beatty are both very active within that school. It's a fantastic resource. It's completely free for members. You can complete a self-assessment. You'll get an improvement plan that you can work through with pointers. There's loads of resources for your employees on there. You can share it with your supply chains as well. The CITB for training and for funding for training. The DWP, employment with disadvantaged groups, they'll be able to support you with that. And perhaps have a conversation with your local Chamber of Commerce as well. And just to round off, really, talk to us, talk to your customers, and let us know about all the good things that you're doing.
Cool. Excellent. Aaron, from obviously the kind of what's been happening so far in the industry, and you know, actually our question says kind of an example of that, in that we're kind of pushing down the request for information down into the supply chain right now. Should actually, you know, the suppliers and subcontractors on here, should they be looking to be a bit more proactive in setting up the story that they have about their organization, so that they can, you know, really start to position themselves strongly in this regard?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two bits to that, isn't there? There's obviously kind of your track record and having a narrative about, you know, the type of organization that you are and the type of things that you do. But it's also about kind of giving us and our customers confidence that you can actually continue to deliver on that track record. So it's as much about having a narrative around what you've done as it is about kind of being able to give us the confidence that you can actually go on to support us with delivering these outcomes. And just to build on what Joe was saying, and I can't really add kind of too much more to it. I think it's really important, particularly for smaller organizations, that they engage in and around social value in a way that's authentic for them, you know, not to try and do something, you know, for the sake of doing it, that's outside of, you know, this clearly there's easy things, not easy, there's things that we can do in terms of making different employment decisions about the pools that we fish in to find the candidates for our vacancies. These things we can do to bring social enterprises and diverse-owned businesses into our supply chain. But I think beyond that, it's just about being authentic. I remember I spoke to an organisation a couple of years ago about social value, and they were very stressed because they were saying, we don't do social value. It's not something that we do. And a bit of digging, and we soon discovered, well, actually, we do all this work with the homeless, but that's just because, you know, it's in our values and it's important to us, and we do sponsor this local football club, but it's just they hadn't establish a narrative. They were doing all this good stuff, but actually hadn't recognized there's a value to it. And not only is there a value in terms of you can quantify, you can put an actual a proxy value on it through one of a myriad of methodologies that are out there. But it's also got a value in terms of supporting you to win work with the likes of Balfour Beatty, Kia, and any other organisation who's bidding into the public sector. So hugely important to kind of recognise the value, tell your story, but also to put systems and processes in place, which means you can go on to support us to deliver with those outcomes.
So that's a perfect link to actually one of the questions, which I think is a really good and very pertinent question. I think could be in the mind of a lot of organisations out there, especially the smaller ones. So is there a concern that smaller companies, many of whom may be newer and more diverse organisations, will not be able to afford the required level of social value? And I think it kind of follows on from that point you were just making, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. But again, you know, I think it's that thing about, you know, there isn't an expectation that it's relevance and proportionality, isn't it? You know, not everybody's going to be required to do everything that Balfour Beatty and Kia is doing. But as long as it's about doing things which are proportionate to your size, scale, and scope, but also relevant in terms of that authenticity piece. And so, yeah, there's no expectation that smaller organisations will deliver to the same degree, but there is an expectation that they deliver. And as I say, you know, there's not many organisations who don't employ people, who don't recruit people, and who don't spend money. And so even if you don't do anything else, you can make different decisions in regards to that can have a more positive social value.
So it once again links quite well onto another question. So when Kia and Balfour Beatty are procuring subcontractors, how do they or other main contractors square the circle of who pays for social value? Main contractors want the lowest price, and that reduces the ability of a subcontractor member to contribute. The same is also true for the client-main contractor relationship.
I'll go first because I'll only half answer it, and then I'll leave the difficult bit to Joe. But I had this conversation with a customer a couple of years ago, and they were talking about, you know, it's all about social value, it's all about value, and it appeared that they went to go and award on cost, and I was like, well, you know, what's this about? And they said, well, yes, we want best value, and we want lowest cost. And so, you know, I recognize the tension, and that is the challenge for us about how can we deliver social value in a way that doesn't incur huge and significant costs. And as I said, you know, there are definite steps that you can take which don't cost a lot of money necessarily. If you want to go all bells and whistles, then yeah, absolutely. But there are some very simple changes you can do that can have a massive impact on the social value you can deliver. And so I think, you know, it's to not look at it in terms of its cost and the investment, but look at it in terms of, well, where are we now? And what are those incremental changes that we can make that can start to kind of put something together? So it isn't necessarily about going out and recruiting a social value lead if you only have 10 people in your organization. It's just about making different decisions.
And I agree completely with what Aaron just said there. And I think the only thing I can really add to that is, now that we've got that 10% weighting within the PPN 06 and the way that that is being cascaded throughout government, not just within central government, but across all government departments, the way that is going to, we're already seeing it start to filter into private sector as well. And I think that will just continue, that trend will continue as the whole of the ESG agenda is being pushed so heavily by investors at the moment as well. I think we will start to see a bit of a shift in that regard. We will start winning, so that, you know, the likes of Kia, Balfour Beatty, our competitors as well, will start winning things based more on that value add as the clients make that more of a priority, and that will filter down then as we let our contracts. So it's just going to have that cascade effect, I think, through the whole industry.
Yes, and we do the way social value is built into our tenders. It's a balanced scorecard approach, and so, you know, one won't exclude the other, but it's all things being considered. Typically, it's not the lowest bid that we go to. Yes, with this pressure on everybody to reduce cost, but typically we don't go to the lowest cost. We very rarely go to the highest cost either. Typically, it's somewhere in the middle of somebody who offers that the total package of a reasonable price, but can also deliver the social value. But it is kind of necessary now. Increasingly, if you cannot deliver anything or contribute anything in terms of social value, then it's unlikely that you're going to be in a position to compete going forward, regardless of what your cost is. And there's going to be an ever shrinking market for those customers who are prepared to work with organisations who can't contribute to this agenda, because it is so important for the reasons kind of Joe's outlined in terms of, you know, all of our economic well-being. And, you know, we certainly appear to need a bit of a economic shot in the arm at the moment, all things considered. And so, you know, by making small decisions, we can all play our part.
That's actually one of the questions come through. Have social value expectations changed given the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, PPN 0620 explicitly talks about COVID recovery and supporting communities and individuals with COVID recovery. And so there's definitely a recognition of of that in the new guidance, and we do a lot of work with social value portal and around the national TOMs, and they've now incorporated elements around COVID recovery. And so absolutely, you know, as things change, so must social value and the outcomes that we need to prioritize.
I guess the elephant in the room question is when I kind of broke the flow a little bit, but that question is nicely linking. Broke the flow from what you were just saying before, Aaron. But the elephant in the room question is that are firms at a disadvantage with your respective organisations if they're not currently in a position to be able to, you know, show high degrees of social value, and obviously, you know, normalise that for the size of the firm. You know, are they now not going to be included in selection processes going forward?
Where we have a customer where we have a commitment to deliver 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% additional social value, we can't deliver that by ourselves. And so we have no choice. We have to identify those suppliers who can support us in delivering on those expectations of our customers. And so it's not necessarily, you know, you're at a disadvantage, but it's certainly an advantage because it's part, if you can, because it's part of our customers' buying criteria. It's part of our buying criteria. If you are, you know, really saying, you know, there's nothing that we've ever done, this when we, you know, spend money in, you know, without having a positive impact, then reach out, engage with us, show willing, because as well, as I said, there's those two pieces. It's not just about what you've done in the past. That's important in terms of giving us confidence that you can deliver going forward. But what's more important is those commitments that you make today and then working with us to ensure that you deliver on those commitments. Sorry, I think it's my mother calling me.
Sorry. I'm trying not to keep you too late for your tea. Joe, from Kia's perspective, like, I guess a similar kind of question. I mean, obviously, you're going to end up with firms that, you know, look like they can do the job, and, you know, but, you know, in some aspects, they're not quite there. Is Kia going to look to work with those firms and, you know, look to, you know, help develop them and move them along, not just through the I guess the tender and contracting process, but actually there and after with you using them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what Aaron said there is absolutely key. You know, we need a supply chain that can support us to deliver what our clients are asking for. But ultimately, we appreciate, and again, Aaron, I apologise for putting words in your mouth, but I'm sure you feel the same about this as we do, that, you know, we're on a journey. We're on a journey of change, and we absolutely need to be supporting our supply chain to get there. We want to work with supply chain partners who share our values, and ultimately deliver on the requirements of our clients. So I think we need to absolutely support the supply chain. We need to make resources available. I know I mentioned Supply Chain Sustainability School earlier, but they really are a fantastic resource. If you're not already a member, I would strongly recommend going and having a look at the website and signing up. It's completely free. So yeah, I think for us, and I'm sure for Balfour's, Aaron, please correct me if I'm wrong, working with the supply chain, supporting and providing guidance and resources is going to be critical.
Yeah, ultimately, you know, it's anti-competitive. We want to increase the number of suppliers who can deliver on social value, because that drives value. It's not in our interest to have an increasingly small number of suppliers that can deliver on social value and those that can't. And again, I think that's part of the rationale behind Supply Chain Sustainability School. We want to raise the tide and all of the boats, not just kind of work with an increasingly small pool of, you know, specialist social value providers. But I think, as I said at the beginning, we need to get to grips with social value. It just needs to become a core competency of what we deliver. You know, it's a really interesting question, the way that you asked it about if a company can't do social value. Well, it's, you know, to me, that's saying if you're a bricklaying organisation and you can't lay bricks, it's one of those things that we have to do. It's fundamental. It's literally what our customers are buying. It's the reason that government spends on infrastructure in terms of the economic impact. They're buying that positive economic bounce as well as, or as much as they're buying the school, the road, the hospital, whatever it might be. They're buying an expectation that will have a positive impact on. And so it isn't an add-on. It's not a bolt-on. It's not this thing which is being thrust upon us. It's absolutely, you know, we're all taxpayers. And so when we're on one side of the fence, we have that expectation that taxpayers' money is spent in a way that has a positive economic impact. And when we're on the other side of it, we're not prepared to support you in delivering that. And so it's just, that's what they're buying when they're buying construction and infrastructure. And so we need to be able to deliver it. And if you can't, then you're not understanding what it is your customers are looking for. But clearly, we want to work to upskill everybody and have more people in a position to compete.
Yeah. Okay. So I've left the polls long behind now. I'm scarred for life. I think I'll try and use them again. As I said earlier on, we've developed this social value goal, and I can already see from some of the questions people are already in there asking questions about and giving, and looks like they're already starting to complete the question set. So because it kind of came out of an industry working group requirement, or an industry requirement, we set up a working group that has the 17 of the top public and private sector organisations. So it's essentially defined by the likes of Joe and Aaron as to what would be in there. Now, I think what's in there now is a starting point. Our intention is, as a working group, is like in, say, 6 months' time, we'll come together, we'll look at responses, we'll look at the feedback from suppliers, we'll look at what's happening in the market. And it might be the case that we make some modifications to the question set. There's even talk that kind of leading to what was referring back to what was discussed earlier on, it may even be that there's an environmental goal that's actually pulled out because it's actually become such a significant piece that it has to be dealt with in its own right. I think we've tried to make it as simple as possible. So some of the questions are why is everything binary and there isn't lots of text in there? And it's because initially we've tried to build it in a way that, one, makes it easy for people to engage with, and two, actually enables the data to be surfaced up in an area that makes it useful to buyer organisations to be able to look across their supply chain. And if you've got lots of free text, then that makes it a little bit more difficult to do that. But that might be something we evolve in the future. So I guess, Aaron, from your perspective, I think we've alluded to a lot of the why along the way, but why, from your perspective, should firms complete the social value goal in the platform? Why? What's the why from a Balfour Beatty perspective?
I think there's three whys, isn't there? One, I suppose, from getting a better understanding of where you are as an organisation. Two, be able to demonstrate where it is that you are, and from our perspective, as I said, we want to be able to go in and find those suppliers who can support us to deliver on our social value requirements. And so it really is as simple as that. You'll have a better understanding of where you are. You've got an opportunity to kind of communicate your commitment and what you can deliver, and you'll be visible to our buyers. Is the bottom line. When we've got requirement to deliver 60% social value, part of our filtered searches will be on, well, who can actually help us to deliver it in practical terms? Click, there's my shortlist. So yeah.
So I guess same question for you, Joe. From a Kia perspective, what's the why as to the suppliers that are on here? Why should they go to the effort of actually completing the social value goal?
I don't know how much more I can add to Aaron's response, actually. I think very much it shows an intention and a willingness. First and foremost, I think that shows us who is at least going to start looking at what they've got going on within their own businesses already, and where they perhaps want to be. And I think to the point Aaron made earlier as well, just answering the questions will give you a really good idea about where our core focuses are as an industry and where our clients are focusing at the moment. And they'll give you some pointers as to where you can go and focus on and what to consider alongside your business.
Yeah.
One of the couple of questions that come through, so I guess it's kind of a given that the idea would be that you as organisations would use this data, will actually go and look at it on a per supplier basis, potentially through this selection, invitation to tender through to contracting phase, or use it as a basis to actually look to identify who it is you're going to, who you need to have conversations with, and on what areas in the context of what it is you're asking them to do and the upstream customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent. I've tried to hit as many questions as possible. We've had a lot of questions come through, so apologies if we haven't answered all your questions. I'm cognizant that we're going to try and quickly squeeze in a quick demo. Aaron, yeah, go on.
Yeah, so I just was scanning through the questions. I looked like I wasn't listening earlier on, and that's because I wasn't. I was reading through the questions, but there's a couple in there. I think, particularly around this proportionality issue around SMEs, and I think just a recognition. I forget whose question it was, but it was an acknowledgement that there's not always an opportunity to employ people just because there's a contract being won doesn't necessarily mean there's an opportunity to recruit, and so. I recognise I've had a bit of an emphasis on the things that I've said around kind of employment and spend, but I think it isn't just about employment and spend. And I suppose I was just doing that to balance kind of Joe's broader comments in terms of that other activity and the other things you can contribute in terms of social value. But I did just want to call out one other thing, and it's an example of a piece of work we did in the West Midlands with the West Midlands Combined Authority, and they set something up called the Construction Gateway. And the principle is true of all combined authorities and local authorities, and there are variations on different models. And Joe mentioned about reaching out to chambers and commerce and the like, but combined authorities and local authorities are already spending lots of money on skills and employment, getting people back into employment. They're already spending lots of money on supporting local businesses, and we tend not to be fully connected with them. And actually what you'll find if you engage with, there usually be a skills and employment or a inclusive growth or something like that at the local authority, combined authority, and they'll absolutely fall over themselves to support you and help you as and when you do have an employment need. They'll absolutely fall over themselves to help you with filling that with somebody who can deliver those triple words social value scores.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Aaron. Right, Tom, you've got 8 minutes to wow everybody with a demo. So I'll quickly stop sharing and hand over to you to crack on.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm now sharing my screen. So what we're going to do is cover off the two sides of this, really from a main contractor perspective, what do they see, and also from a supplier, subcontractor side, what do they also see. The reason for doing that is obviously we've got a mixed room, but also we think it's valuable for those of you who are looking to win that business to understand how it is someone using the platform may go about actually navigating it. So what I'm looking at here is main contractor search, and I can search for a known supplier by name, construction line ID, or company's house number. I've also got other criteria, and I've already set some of those here, but that allows me to search for suppliers either within my own supply chain or all suppliers in general. I can apply certain levels, which we'll look at in a bit more detail in a second. I can also look at location. So if I'm sourcing suppliers who can either operate or are based locally to the project I'm working on, that's an additional filter that I can apply to find the right suppliers for a prospective project. If I just apply this search here, which I've already applied some filters to, we can see the search results. The main part that I'm going to bring your attention to are these goals here. So this is where anyone using the platform can see what a supplier is signed up for. And that's driven by these goals here. So here I've got a gold supplier. We've also got red exclamation marks, which tell someone whether or not they are verified to that level. So you'll see here that we've got a level, which is the social value goal, and that operates in exactly the same way. It is any kind of red exclamation mark against that icon will essentially mean that those questions haven't been completed. If I can scroll down, I can start to see the suppliers that have answered all those questions. What I would just bring your attention to, because I think it's very important, I know it came up in the questions, is that the social value goal has no bearing on the overall verification. So here, for example, you can see I've got a supplier who is verified to gold, but is currently not verified to the social value question set. So one does not have a bearing on the other, and that goes both ways. What I can do here is if I want to apply some extra filters, I can add filters and apply some of those extra things around, size of company. We heard earlier that SME engagement is important, but I can also search for social value suppliers, and this will give me my list of suppliers who have completed the social value question set. And what you can do from a main contractor perspective is exactly the same as any search you'd have. you would be able to go in, view the profile, see what they're verified to. So the supplier is verified to gold as well as social value. You'll be able to look at the details, and you'd be able to go in and have a look at the answers. So here, for example, if I want to look at the details of their memberships and accreditations, specifically around social value, I can see the responses and go in there and check the answers. The other part that will be coming increasingly to the fore is this view of buyer connections, which is where a main contractor has set the compliance so that they, one of the requirements of their supply chain is to have the social value question set. And that will then show both the buyer and the supplier a condensed view of those requirements related specifically to social value. So because this is a social value requirement, I'm only seeing those requirements that are specific to social value, not those other ones in that particular view. The other part that we'll touch on, I think particularly important from a buyer point of view, is around the reporting. So today we have a CSR report, which I think, of CSR section rather, which I think will update as we heard earlier. That's probably old money in terms of terminology, but we'll be generating out a new social value section to the reports, which will bring to the fore all those extra information data points that we're capturing. So here, for example, we've got things like minimum wage. We'll be having extra information on things like living wage, which we'll also be capturing. We do capture social enterprise today, but we don't capture whether they're a voluntary organization or a startup, for example. So it's all those extra elements that have come in as part of the extra criteria and the information that we'll be capturing to give people reports. And essentially what you can do is look across a large data set and see exactly how they've answered a particular question. So this one specifically is on modern slavery, but that would also apply to any questions around local engagement or plans to get net zero carbon, for example, and you're able to drill down and look at more information on those suppliers. Just lastly then, so from a supplier perspective, the goal works in exactly the same way. So I'm here, I'm on the platform. This one's currently not verified, but the requirements act in exactly the same way as you'll be familiar with. So this is a gold supplier, and you can see all of the sections where social value is a requirement, and you'll be able to go down, drill down, have a look at those. And by using the show, you can see that mental health and well-being is a new requirement that's needed as part of social value. And you would go in, edit, and submit the answers in exactly the same way as you would do normally. And we've also have a certificate available for download, so that when you've completed the social value questions, you'll be able to go into here and download those certificates in the same way as you would do normally. That was fairly quick, but please, if you have got any questions, do put them in the Q&A. If we can't answer them now, then we will send them back to you as an FAQ if you can't answer them today. Okay, that's it. I'll pass you back to you, Rob.
I was going to say just leave it on. I think yeah, we're literally just coming up to the last couple of minutes, so we'll quickly use the last 60 seconds before I say thank you to Joe and Aaron. Just looking through some of the other questions. So there's a couple of things that come up about social enterprises, and Joe's quite rightly reminded me. In the next couple of months, we're going to be launching an initiative where with a company called Supply Chain, who assess social enterprises. And essentially any firm that's introduced to us as a social enterprise, providing supply chain, verify that, we will be giving them a free gold membership on the platform. So we essentially, social enterprises won't have to pay to be a common assessment standard on the platform anymore. And also from a buyer perspective, you'll be pleased to know that we'll actually be creating a specific goal in the search filter that Tom was just showing. So you'll be able to go and look specifically for social enterprises when sourcing. Like I said, there's been a whole raft of other questions, and unfortunately we haven't been able to get through all of them. But we'll definitely put them into a document, and we'll try and get answers to all the ones that we can. We'll literally just come up on the hour, so perfect timing, I think, by all of us. So I'd just like to say to Aaron and Joe, massive thank you for taking the time to be on here. You know, given the level of engagement, it's pretty clear that everybody's found it really, really useful. And I think it's really powerful to hear what you on behalf of your respective organisations are saying in relation to social value. So thank you very much. And likewise, for everybody who's been on the webinar, I'm starting to see people having to run off to other meetings. The number of attendees is starting to drop away. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. In the next day or so, we'll send an email that I'll have a link to the webinar and the presentation as well. If you have any questions, please get back to us. If you're a buyer and you would like help with driving adoption of it through your supply chain, please contact success@constructionline.co.uk. This will all be in the email as well. If you are a supplier that doesn't have a buyer profile, but you'd like to be able to roll this out to your subcontractors or be able to look at source by social value across the network, once again, send an email to success@constructionline.co.uk. And if you are a supplier and you can't find the question set under your managed compliance just yet, although it should be in the next day or so, please send an email to product@constructionline.co.uk and we'll make sure we get that in place for you. But like I say, in the next 12 hours, anybody who doesn't have it should definitely have it by then. So with that, thank you very much, everybody. Once again, thanks a lot, Aaron and Joe. I think it's been a really, really good session. And yeah, look forward to seeing the numbers go up of people filling out the question set. Thank you very much.